This free step-by-step video comes to you directly from Haynes, creators of the world's best repair manuals. Fix your car or truck the right way with our accurate and reliable information at your side. You can complete more than 200 jobs on this vehicle when you purchase the complete online manual at Haynes.com.
Apply the handbrake. Chock the rear wheels to prevent the vehicle from rolling. Loosen the front wheel lug nuts. Then jack up the front of the car and support it on jack stands. Remove the wheel for the drive axle being replaced. Unstake the drive axle hub nut with a hammer and punch or chisel. Loosen the drive axle hub nut with a large socket and breaker bar. To prevent the hub from turning while you're loosening the drive axle nut, wedge a pry bar between two of the wheel studs. If an assistant is available, having them depress the brake pedal while loosening the nut will also work. Remove the drive axle hub nut from the axle and discard it. Place a floor jack under the lower control arm to support it. Remove the damper fork to shock pinch bolt. Discard the bolt and obtain a new one for installation. Remove the damper fork to lower control arm nut and bolt, tapping the bolt out with a hammer and long punch if necessary. Discard the nut and bolt and obtain new ones for installation. Remove the damper fork. It may be necessary to tap the fork from the shock absorber using a soft-faced hammer. Remove the cotter pin from the castle nut on the lower ball joint stud. Loosen the castle nut until it's near the end of the stud threads, but don't remove it completely. This will prevent the components from separating violently. Using a 2-jaw puller, separate the lower control arm from the ball joint in the steering knuckle. Remove the nut completely. Discard the castle nut and obtain a new one for installation. Since the drive axle spleens will more than likely stick in the hub, tap on the end of the drive axle with a soft-faced hammer. Penetrating lubricant can also be sprayed to help free the spleens. Transfer the floor jack to be placed underneath the brake disc using a block of wood on the head of the jack to prevent damage to the disc. This will prevent the hub assembly from falling too far downward as the lower control arm is fully separated. Insert a large pry bar into the hole in the control arm. Then pry the control arm downwards and separate the steering knuckle, hub, assembly ball joint stud from the control arm. Once separated, the block of wood and/or floor jack can be removed and the hub assembly can be rested carefully on the control arm. Swing the knuckle and hub assembly out, away from the vehicle, until the end of the drive axle is free of the hub. Support the outer end of the drive axle with a piece of wire to avoid unnecessary strain on the CV joints. Pry the inner drive axle CV joint out of the transaxle, or on models so equipped, prying off the intermediate shaft using a large screwdriver or pry bar. Support the CV joints and carefully remove the drive axle from the vehicle. If the new or overhauled drive axle doesn't already have one installed, pry the old spring clip from the inner end of the drive axle shaft and install a new one. Clean the transaxle or intermediate shaft seal, then examine the condition of the seal. Replace it if necessary. Lubricate the transaxle or intermediate shaft seal with a multi-purpose grease. Raise the drive axle into position while supporting the CV joints. Then insert the inner spleened end into the transaxle or intermediate shaft. It is easier to engage the spring clip into the transaxle if the opening in the clip is facing down when installing. Push the drive axle firmly into the transaxle or intermediate shaft. Support the outer CV joint, then make sure the spring clip locks in its groove by attempting to pull the inner joint out, grasping by the CV joint housing. The inner joint should not back out of the transaxle. Apply a light coat of multi-purpose grease to the outer CV joint splines. Pull out the knuckle and hub assembly and insert the outer splines into the hub. Lift the hub assembly up and insert the ball joint stud into the control arm. Install the castle nut and tighten it to the specified torque setting. Install the new cotter pin through the castle nut. If necessary, tighten the nut a little more to allow lock pin insertion. Never loosen the nut in order to align the hole in the ball joint with the castellations in the nut. Install the damper fork onto the shock absorber in the correct direction. The slot in the damper must align and be flush with the notch on the shock absorber assembly. Tap the damper fork from below using a soft-faced hammer until the mounting holes are aligned and the slot notch are engaged. Insert the new lower damp fork mounting bolt through the fork and control arm in the correct direction. Then screw on the new nut. Install the new upper damp fork pinch bolt. With the floor jack head placed underneath the lower control arm, raise it to simulate normal ride height. Tighten the new upper damp fork pinch bolt to the specified torque setting. Tighten the new damper fork to lower control arm nut, while counter-holding the bolt to the specified torque setting. Remove the floor jack from the lower control arm. Install a new drive axle hub nut. Using the method mentioned at the beginning of the procedure to prevent the hub from turning, tighten the drive axle hub nut to the specified torque setting. Using a hammer and punch, stake the collar of the nut into the slot in the drive axle. Install the front wheels and lug nuts. Lower the car to the ground and tighten the wheel lug nuts to the specified torque setting.